Today's recipe was a highly requested one. People have been asking me for peppermint bark brownies for years, and I don't know what took me so long. Actually, I do. It took a lot of recipe testing. I've tested this recipe like every year, and it took this long to get to the right version. We're going to start, before I forget, with preheating our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, we're going to need 12 tablespoons of butter. This is unsalted butter. Temperature doesn't really matter because we are going to melt it in the microwave. Oh, terrible noise. We'll cut that out for you. And I am just going to make the process a little bit faster and easier by cutting the butter into pieces before I take it over. And again, this is 12 tablespoons or 3/4 cup or 170 grams. Into the microwave it goes in like 20-second intervals until the butter is completely melted. All right, once our butter is nice and melted, a little piece there, I want to melt, we will add our cocoa powder. This is 3/4 cup or 75 grams of Dutch processed cocoa powder. We're going to add it right into the warm butter. This is going to help bloom the cocoa and just give us a richer, deeper chocolate flavor. I actually really love these brownies. There's no melted chocolate bar in them, and that's usually what makes them amazing for me. But this version turned out so nicely and fudgy and chewy, and it just works really well with the peppermint bark topping. Next up is 1 3/4 cup or 350 grams of granulated sugar. Before I add my eggs, I'm just going to whisk in this sugar real quick just to help cool down the butter a little bit. We don't want things to be too hot when we add our eggs. It could potentially cook the eggs, so just want to cool things down a bit. Everything feels nice, so let's add our eggs. We will need 3 large eggs for this recipe, and they should really be room temperature. It's going to make things combine best. 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to lightly beat these before I add them into brownie batter. And next you'll need a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So I opted to not put peppermint extract in the actual brownie itself. The peppermint extract is just going to be going on the topping. I felt that worked really well, so you get a nice present peppermint flavor without it being overwhelming. That's why there's no peppermint in here, not like we just forgot. All right, once I have those eggs, I'm going to whisk pretty vigorously. The top of this brownie is going to be covered by our peppermint bark, so it's not like you are really focusing on trying to get super shiny tops. So you want to whisk well, but you don't need to be like aggressive or go crazy with it like you do in some of my other brownies. Okay, once this is well mixed and glossy and beautiful, let's just slide it out of the way and grab a separate bowl for our dry ingredients. We'll add 1 1/3 cup or 165 grams of all-purpose flour, 1/2 heaping teaspoon of table salt, should say slightly rounded teaspoon. Like a little bit more than 1/2, but not quite 3/4. And a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Baking powder adds just a little bit of lift and keeps the brownie from being too dense. Like, I love a dense brownie, but this texture works really well with the super dense peppermint bark topping. Grab my little baby whisk everything together. We are done with our whisks for now. So we can go ahead and add all of our dry ingredients right in the bowl. And I'm going to gently fold things together. And once things are pretty much combined, I'm going to add an optional ingredient that I really love. I like to add even more chocolate into the brownies. This is a chopped 4-ounce bar of white chocolate. Here you could swap this out for white chocolate chips if you prefer. On the topping, we stick to white chocolate bars. And 1/3 cup or 60 grams of mini chocolate chips. The added chocolate just really adds a nice little pop of color with the white chocolate and just like a nice added texture. So I think it works really well here. Let's grab our baking pan. This is a 9-inch square baking pan. I do recommend a metal baking pan. If you use glass or ceramic, things are just going to take longer to bake. Metal's really best here. Try to remember to link to this in my description. The full recipe is always in my description for anyone who is looking for that. All right, let's go ahead, drop our brownie batter in here. Here we go. Let's press this into an even layer or an even-ish layer. Try to get it into the corners. As long as you do a pretty good job, the oven will take care of the rest. The parchment paper makes it a little bit more finicky, but it's so worth it when you go to just lift the bars out of the pan later on. It's life a lot easier in the end. Oh my goodness, I don't leave that much batter behind. Okay, let's take this over to the center rack, 350 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven. Brownies are going to need to bake for about 30 to 32 minutes. Don't overbake these brownies. Lots of times I will tell you it should come out clean. You want a little bit of fudge. I'll show you how the toothpick should look. Don't make them raw, you know, like cook them, but you do want them to have a little bit of fudginess on the toothpick. That's going to help ensure you get a really nice, moist, fudgy brownie. Okay, the brownies need to cool until they're just warm, not super hot, and you know, you can handle them before we do the peppermint bark top. topping. This uses a lot of chocolate, but it comes together really easily and it's so good. You're going to need 6 ounces of chopped white chocolate. Again, I really like a baking bar. It's going to work a lot better and melt a lot nicer than chocolate chips would. And we're going to add 3 tablespoons of cream. We're basically going to make like a ganache, but it's fudgier and more chocolatey than a regular ganache. For our dark chocolate, again, chocolate baking bar is better. This is 4 ounces, sorry, had to remember that. And we're going to be adding 2.5 tablespoons of cream. The ratios are a little different just because white chocolate and real chocolate behave differently. We're just going to pop these in the microwave, melt them in like 25-second intervals, stirring well in between until they are smooth and no lumps remain. Of course, we need peppermint flavor. You are going to want to use peppermint extract for this recipe, not mint extract. Mint extract leaves a little more spearminty. We are looking for candy cane flavors. So we're just going to do a half teaspoon of peppermint extract to each of our chocolates. I'm gonna stir this in and should be smelling nice and minty fresh right now. Next, this part is fun, but it also stresses me out. We're going to do the peppermint chocolate swirl on top. So there are a lot of different ways you could do this, but I usually just kind of pour the chocolate over. I'm going to save a little bit back. Do the same thing with the chocolate, kind of trying to hit the parts I didn't get because I want this to be an even layer ultimately. It always looks so chaotic at first, but usually it comes together nicely. Right, and then you're just going to take a knife and just swirl the white chocolate and the dark chocolate together. All right, and then you should have a pretty nice swirl going on here. We're going to add some crushed candy canes. I usually crush like a tablespoon worth of candy canes. I don't like to add them right away because if the topping's a little warm, the peppermint can start to melt a little bit and then it just doesn't look pretty. So I'll usually let this sit for like 10 minutes, then I'll add the candy cane, and then I will wait for the ganache to set completely before I dig in. All right, once your topping has set, thanks to our parchment paper, we can easily pop that out of the baking pan. And let's go ahead and take a look. Slice into this. Do a nice corner piece. Are you a corner brownie person or a center brownie person? That is how you make these highly requested, incredibly delicious peppermint bark brownies. If you try it, of course, I want to know what you think. I really do always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. This is excellent. It was worth the time it took to get it right. Chocolate in there. That would have been bad. Ah! Or ooh, there's a hair on my apron. It's a little sticky. I thought I got myself a knife out.